Hello, my name is Justin, and I am an atheist. Shocking, I know. To those of you who grew up devoutly religious, even to some of you who have since left the faith, the atheist label may be one that you consider to be hostile, inflammatory, or even evil. But why is this, and what is somebody really saying when they identify themselves as an atheist? That's what we're going to talk about in this video today. First of all, let's work through the definitions of a few words to give ourselves a base to work with. The first word we need to define is theism. Theism, in its simplest form, is defined as belief in the existence of a god or gods. The word theism comes from the Greek word theos, which means God. Atheism is very similar in that it also comes from the Greek word theos, meaning God, but also includes the Greek prefix a, which is an addition to a word that, in English, translates to without. By this right, a theist is one who actively holds a belief in the existence of a god or gods, whereas an atheist is somebody who does not actively hold a belief in the existence of a god or gods. Now, the distinction may seem minimal, but I feel I must clarify that not holding a belief in a god is different from actively holding a belief that a god does not exist. Many religious people like to scoff at the claim that atheism is merely the lack of a belief in God rather than its own unique positive claim that there is no God, because by the merit of an atheist not making a positive claim, the one doing so, in most cases the religious person, is forced to bear the burden of proof for their belief and must therefore provide evidence for it rather than simply expecting to be provided with evidence to the contrary. However, while it may seem at times like an intricate game of semantics for an atheist to claim that rather than making the positive claim that there is no God, they simply lack a belief in God and therefore make no positive claim, the fact of the matter is that no evidence must be provided to support the lack of a belief in something when no adequate evidence for that thing has been shown. This is often due to the fact that despite what many religious zealots would have people believe, nobody is born believing in a God. People, at least in America, are often taught about God from a very young age and raised to follow in their religious footsteps of their parents. However, no matter how strong somebody's faith in a particular god or set of gods is, everybody is born an atheist, having no positive belief in a god as they have no concept of God. As such, a lack of belief in a god or gods is the simple default position for humans and need not be defended. That being said, there are still ways to actively defend your position if you do lack a belief in God, but we'll go ahead and save those for another video as they aren't really necessary here. So at this point, we have established the difference between theism and atheism. We've established that the two terms are binary answers to the question, do you believe in a god or gods, and that no other position adequately answers this question. If somebody actively holds a belief in a god or gods, they are a theist. And if somebody does not actively hold a belief in God, even if they are not necessarily sure whether a god exists or not, they are still an atheist. Now, I'm sure at this point many people will be thinking, excuse me, sir, I'm really just not sure whether a god exists or not. I'm not an atheist, I'm just an agnostic, in the middle, somewhere between believing and not believing. However, I will now explain to you why agnosticism is not a valid position to hold on the issue of whether you personally believe in a god or not. To do so, we'll need to define a few more terms. Now, the first term that we need to define this time is Gnostic, as it is the base word that forms the word agnostic. The word Gnostic comes from the Greek word gnostos, which in English means known. Now, when you take the word Gnostic and you add the English prefix a, which is different from the Greek prefix used in the word atheism, the definition of agnostic is simply not known. So some of you may now find yourselves thinking that I've just proved your point, that because you don't know for sure whether a god exists or not, you are agnostic. However, you would only be about half right. As we established earlier, the question, do you personally believe in a god or gods, is a binary yes or no question. Your only options with which to answer that question are yes, which means that you do actively believe in a god or gods and makes you, by extension, a theist, or no, which means that you do not actively believe in a god or gods, which makes you, by extension, an atheist. Now, the natural follow-up question for a theist is, do you know for sure that a god or gods exist? If the theist answers yes, they would consider themselves to be a Gnostic theist. If they answer no, they would be considered an agnostic theist. By the same token, if you asked an atheist whether or not they were certain that no gods exist, they would be faced with yet another binary question. If they answer yes, they're certain that no God exists, then they would consider themselves to be a Gnostic atheist. An atheist who answers that question with a no, however, meaning that they are not absolutely certain that a God does not exist, would still be considered to be an atheist, but an agnostic atheist. So now we've established that calling oneself agnostic does not adequately answer the question of whether or not one personally believes in a god or gods, as Gnosticism and agnosticism merely describe the degree of certainty with which a belief is held. Now, one of the very few things that a majority of honest atheists and honest theists alike can generally agree on is the fact that no matter how fervently someone believes in a god or dismisses the claim that a god exists, at the end of the day it is only their personal belief or lack thereof, and by extension neither of them is fully capable of knowing for certain whether or not a god exists. While there are certainly some who would disagree with this statement and claim with absolute certainty that there absolutely is or absolutely is not a god, the majority of truly honest people understand and accept the fact that the only truly honest position as to the certainty of any claim involving the general existence of a god is the position of agnosticism. So by this token, we can agree that the only honest position regarding the certainty of any belief held about the general existence of a god or gods is agnosticism. I'll go ahead and hope that you, my viewer, are an honest person, and as such I will hope that you will agree that regardless of whether or not you personally hold a belief in a god, you do not necessarily know for absolute certain either way. This simple fact whittles us down from our original 4 possible crosses of Gnostic Theist, Agnostic Theist, Gnostic Atheist, and Agnostic Atheist to now only having 2 possible choices. Assuming that you are an honest person and accept that you are agnostic about the general existence of a god or gods, you are left with only the 2 possible options of being either an Agnostic Theist, somebody who actively believes in the existence of a god or gods but does not know for absolute certain, or an agnostic atheist, someone who does not actively believe in the existence of a god or gods, but also does not know for absolute certain that a god does not exist. And now to bring all of this together, let's go back to the beginning. The first question you need to answer is, do you personally actively believe in a god or gods? If your answer is yes, then you are a theist. If your answer is no, I'm not sure, or absolutely anything else other than yes, you are an atheist. Having established that, the second question you must answer is, do you know with absolute certainty whether or not a god exists? If your answer is yes, then you are likely either mistaken or lying. However, you would consider yourself to be a Gnostic Theist or a Gnostic Atheist depending on what your answer to the first question was. If your answer was no, then you would consider yourself to be an Agnostic Theist or an Agnostic Atheist depending on what your answer to the first question was. Now, despite all of this, there are likely some of you who came into this video simply identifying as an agnostic and will simply insist that regardless of all of the points in this video, you should be allowed to identify however you would like as far as belief in a god is concerned, and will doubt the importance of using the proper definitions of words when identifying oneself. So with all that being said, why does it matter what we call ourselves when we do not actively believe in a god? It matters because the term atheist has been claimed by many religions as a dirty, ugly title that nobody wants to claim, adding all different types of emotional baggage and nasty subtext to the word to discourage people from openly identifying as atheists even when they no longer believe in God. This societal hijacking of the word atheist causes nothing but confusion and fear for the largest minority group in America, dividing us and keeping us from demanding the representation in government that we ought to have. The more people embrace the undeniably correct label of atheist, despite societal pressures that push against it, the easier it'll be for people in the future to openly identify as what they truly are, without fear of unfounded hatred or disgust from people who seek to misrepresent us. Anyway, that's all for this particular video. Be sure to leave a comment down below telling me how you identified before watching this video, whether that changed at all having now watched the video, and why you were or were not convinced by my arguments. I'm curious as to how my audience identifies, and if I get a decent number of comments saying that people were, for one reason or another, unconvinced by the arguments I've put forward in this video, I may make some follow-up videos further explaining different points of the contention. However, until next time, thank you all very much for watching, and as always, have a blessed day, fellow heathens.